Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. The starships of Star Wars might be fantastical, but their designs and looks are definitely influenced by real-world avionics and design. One of the most famous starfighters in all of Star Wars was the Incom T-65B X-Wing. It was the mainline starfighter for the Rebel Alliance and played a huge part in winning the Galactic Civil War. Today I want to take a look at the design and history of this famous Rebel starfighter and compare it to what I consider its real-life counterpart, the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II. Incom Corporation starts out in legends as a repulsor lift manufacturer. Repulsor lifts were essentially anti-gravity engines used for planetary-bound vehicles and starships, which are flying in the atmosphere. Repulsors were also used in other more mundane things like hand carts and elevators and even bridges. One of Incom's early famous projects was the repulsor lifts that keep Bespin's Cloud City floating. In 400 BBY, the corporation would finish construction on the massive platform's anti-grav system, and almost 1,000 years later, that platform is still standing, a testament to the company's engineering and design skills. Now, Incom would eventually start messing around with building their own starship hulls and eventually would build their own starship. At first, they would collaborate with more established starship companies like Subro corporations so that they could learn more about starship design. But by the time the Clone Wars was in full swing, Incom Corporation had already become a huge player in the starfighter market. They had a huge line of different ships ranging from the in-atmosphere T-16 to the three-man aggressive reconnaissance 170 starfighter. Incom Corporation would get the majority of their defense contracts from the Republic, but when the Empire rose after Order 66, Incom Corporation faced a tough decision. Emperor Palpatine's vision of the Empire meant the nationalization of companies like Incom. These corporations, with their valuable technology and research, were deemed too important to be kept in the hands of private entities. Incom's core design and engineering team would all quit because they didn't want to make starships for such a brutal regime. While Incom Corporation would continue operations, it would lack that same spark that made it so special in the first place. In a last act of defiance, the Incom staff who left would gift the prototype blueprint design for the T-65B X-Wing to the Rebel Alliance. This design would go up against Incom's biggest rival in starship manufacturing, Senior Fleet Systems, and their TIE Fighter line. Lockheed Martin is one of the largest defense contractors in the world, and it's heavily dependent on contracts from the federal government. 78% of Lockheed Martin's revenue comes from the US government, and that makes up 10% of all funds paid out to contractors by the Department of Defense. The company started out in 1926 just as Lockheed Corporation, and they've been responsible for some of the most iconic airplane designs in American history, like the P-38 Lightning, which was a unique twin-engine, twin-boom fighter aircraft. Not only did the P-38 share the Lightning name with the F-35, it was also considered a multi-purpose fighter. Lockheed's subsidiary Vega also helped mass-produce several larger aircraft like the famous Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. It was also during World War II that Lockheed Corporations would begin preparations for their advanced research program known as Skunk Works. Skunk Works is a designation used in the engineering and technical field to describe a group that is given a lot of autonomy on how they can proceed in the development of top-secret projects. This part of Lockheed Corporation really reminds me of the central design team from Incom Corporation. Lockheed's Skunk Works would produce the P-80 Shooting Star, the first jet fighter to score a jet-to-jet aerial kill. It downed a MiG-15. The secretive group would also go on to produce the UT High Altitude Spy Plane and the even higher altitude SR-71 Blackbird spy plane, and also the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. Just manufacturing one of these amazing aircraft would have made Lockheed Martin a formidable aircraft manufacturer. The fact that they designed and manufactured all of these makes them legendary. In 2001, the US military started a competition to create the next generation fighter jet. This was one of the largest military contracts ever created, and estimates for the cost of this program throughout its entire life cycle, aka maintenance and stuff, is $1 trillion. Lockheed Martin would face stiff competition from one of its main rivals, Boeing. The T-65B X-Wing was the product of all of Incom's experience and research throughout the Clone Wars. The Z-95 Headhunter was a fantastic starfighter, easy to pilot, durable, and very maneuverable. But because it was designed during the pacifist pre-Clone Wars period, it lacked a lot of the design features you would want on a modern starfighter. Although the Grand Army of the Republic commissioned a special Clone Wars variant of the Headhunter, its lack of hyperdrive, astromech socket, and outdated specs made it obsolete for the Clone Wars battlefields. The ARC 170 was supposed to be the response to the Z-95 Headhunter. It was built on a very similar platform, but was just a lot larger. Categorized as a long-range reconnaissance fighter, the ARC 170 had everything the Headhunter did not, including a 3-man crew with 2 pilots and a rear gunner, who had his own gunner turret along with an astromech. The starfighter was equipped with an impressive Class 1.5 hyperdrive and had state-of-the-art sensors along with a healthy amount of weapons, including 2 very powerful medium laser cannons and a proton torpedo launcher. The problem was the ARC 170 was too large of a ship with too many moving parts. Against smaller unmanned short-range drone interceptors, the ARC 170 would get ripped apart. After the Battle of Coruscant, the Grand Army of the Republic reassessed the design of the ARC 170 and more or less retired it from active duty. This would eventually lead to the Empire's Starfighter Doctrine, which mainly relies on lightly armed interceptors. This was a pretty drastic choice by the Empire because they would eventually choose the TIE Fighter line as their main starfighter, and that starship specifically had a lot of limitations. The Incom T-65B X-Wing, on the other hand, was the best balanced starfighter of the war. And critics of the design say that it's mediocre at everything, whereas supporters will say it's versatile and flexible. For the Rebel Alliance, it fit their needs very well for a variety of reasons. First, the Rebel Alliance had very few capital ships. They actually relied on mainly snub fighters throughout the first years of the war. The X-Wing was not only hyperspace capable, it also had an impressive Class 1 hyperdrive. This allowed it to quickly enter and exit the battlefield. The T-65B could also keep up and sometimes even outmaneuver the agile TIE fighter in a straight-up dogfight. This was thanks to the fact that the X-Wing had 4 wingtip lasers and robust deflector shields, along with proton torpedoes. Translated, this means the survivability of the X-Wing far surpassed that of the standard TIE fighter and even some of the special variants like the TIE Interceptor. This is mainly because most of the TIE fighter line lacks shields. One of the huge problems that the Rebel Alliance faced was the fact that they had a shortage of trained pilots. The Empire had a massive Imperial Academy and pilot pipeline. The Rebels, especially in the beginning of the war, had basically nothing. Occasionally they would have defected Imperial pilots, but mostly they relied on civilian and commercial pilots. The advantage the T-65B had was that its handling and controls were actually very similar to that of a T-6 Skyhopper, a very popular in-atmosphere repulsor craft used by bush pilots in the Outer Rim. And so the X-Wing was well balanced and still easy to fly, even though it was more complicated and expensive than its competition. It would serve the Rebel Alliance very well all throughout the Galactic Civil War. The Joint Strike Fighter program is probably one of the most ambitious and demanding programs of its type. It involved not only the United States, but also the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and many other allied nations. The JSF program was actually originally 2 separate contracts merged into one. First, you had the Common Affordable Lightweight Fighter Project. The key word here is affordable, which means the Marines are involved. The idea here was to create a stowable fighter craft that could replace the aging F-16 Fighting Falcon. STOVL, or STOVL, means short takeoff and vertical landing aircraft, like the Harrier jump jet, which used to be used by the USMC. The Marines are primarily a lightly equipped expeditionary infantry force. Their jets therefore needed to be able to operate on very rudimentary airstrips and runways, which is why STOVL became a requirement for the Common Affordable Lightweight Fighter program. The other part of the JSF program was known as the Joint Advanced Strike Technology Project. This program was established in 1994 to replace a variety of US and UK aircraft with one single family of fighters. The belief here was that a single airframe would greatly decrease logistics, housing, maintenance, and training costs. These 2 projects were very different in nature and also both separately very ambitious. To combine them together is sort of insanity. The result was a program that demanded a fighter jet that essentially could do almost everything, kind of like the X-Wing. The JSF needed to have state-of-the-art stealth capabilities. This means radio frequency and infrared signature reduction and also onboard countermeasures. This would allow the F-35 to support the beastly F-22 Raptor on air superiority missions. The JSF also required a reduced logistical and maintenance structure. Remember, everything here was about saving money. LOL. The JSF also had to be able to carry a large payload of weapons internally in a weapons bay in order to reduce the aircraft's signature. At the same time, variants of the F-35 reserved for the Marines had to have VTOL capabilities and other specific requirements for the other branches of the military. Because everyone, again, was going to be using this: the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. Like the X-Wing, the JSF was supposed to be a single solution for the entire military. Ultimately, the two finalists of the competition were Lockheed Martin's X-35C and Boeing's X-32B. Northrop Grumman, the creators of the F-14 Tomcat, and McDonnell Douglas, creator of the F-18 Hornet, also submitted their own entries for this program. The biggest challenge all of these companies faced was creating a stable and reliable engine design that gave the craft VTOL capabilities. Lockheed's design featured a single engine which actually could rotate for landing and takeoff. This was selected as the winner of the competition. The F-35 platform has been criticized by the public for a variety of reasons, ranging from the cost of the program to the actual performance of the jet. The common complaint is that the F-35 lacks the same flight abilities as other 4th and 5th generation fighter jets. But the reality is a F-35 most likely will not get into many close-range line-of-sight dogfights, as its highly advanced weapon systems can engage dozens of enemy fighters at ranges exceeding 100 miles. And like the T-65B X-Wing, the F-35 Lightning is said to be one of the easier jets to fly. It has an extremely powerful pilot assist that prevents the user from making any critical mistakes. So there you have it, guys. That is my analysis on why the T-65B X-Wing is very similar to the F-35 Lightning II, especially in its design and purpose. Let me know in the comment section below if I've missed anything, and also don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.